Orphan boy writes a secret note. What the staff finds changes his life forever. The countryside stretched far and wide, dotted with rolling hills and patches of dense forest. At the edge of a small rural town sat St. Mary's Orphanage, a weathered building that seemed to carry the weight of time. It wasn't a bad place, but it wasn't warm either. For the children who called it home, it was a world of routines, muted laughter, and quiet dreams that they mostly kept to themselves. Liam was one of those children. At 12 years old, he was small for his age, with pale skin and freckles that dusted his cheeks. His unruly brown hair often fell into his eyes, giving him the look of someone who preferred to hide from the world. Liam wasn't the kind of boy who drew much attention. He was quiet, blending into the background of the orphanage's noisy halls and bustling dormitories. Most days, he carried a notebook tucked under his arm, his sanctuary in a world that often felt too big and indifferent. One gray afternoon, Liam sat cross-legged on the wooden floor of the boys' dormitory, his back pressed against the peeling wall. The other boys were outside playing soccer, their shouts and laughter filtering through the window. Liam didn't mind being alone. It was when he felt most at peace. With his notebook open on his lap, he bent over it, his pencil moving quickly across the page. Dear whoever finds this, I'm Liam. I live here at St. Mary's. I'm writing this because, I don't know. I guess I just want someone to know me. Not the quiet kid or the one who's always in the background. The real me. He paused, biting his lip as he thought about what to write next. He had started dozens of letters like this, but this one felt different. It wasn't just something to pass the time. It felt important, though he couldn't quite explain why. I'm not sure what I want to say. I guess I just hope that one day, someone will read this and understand me. Maybe even Swami. Liam's hand trembled slightly as he wrote the last words. He blinked quickly, pushing back the tears that threatened to form. Crying was something he had learned to avoid, especially in a place like this. The other boys didn't need much of a reason to tease him, and tears would only make it worse. He carefully folded the note and looked around the room. His gaze landed on a loose floorboard near the corner, a spot he had discovered by accident months ago. Liam crawled over to it, lifting the board just enough to slip the note inside. He pressed it down firmly, making sure it was secure before letting the board fall back into place. It wasn't much, but it felt like a tiny act of hope, a way of sending his thoughts out into the world, even if no one ever found them. The next morning, the orphanage buzzed with its usual rhythm. The children filed into the dining hall for breakfast, a meal of lumpy oatmeal and slightly stale bread. Liam sat at the end of one of the long wooden tables, nibbling at his food while the other boys chatted and joked around him. He didn't mind the solitude. It gave him time to think, to imagine stories about far-off places and lives that felt so different from his own. Liam, eat your food, Miss Clara said as she passed by his table, her voice kind but firm. She was one of the few adults at St. Mary's who paid attention to him, though her responsibilities often kept her too busy for more than a passing word. Yes, Miss Clara, he murmured, picking up his spoon and taking a small bite of oatmeal. She gave him an encouraging smile before moving on to wrangle a group of boys who were throwing bread crusts at each other. After breakfast, the children were sent outside to play. Liam wandered to the edge of the yard, where a large oak tree offered shade and a quiet place to sit. He pulled out his notebook and began to write, letting the sound of the wind rustling through the leaves fill the silence around him. He didn't notice Miss Clara watching him from a distance. She often worried about Liam. There was a sadness to him that she couldn't quite reach, a quiet longing that broke her heart. She wished she had more time to sit with him, to draw him out of his shell. But with so many children to care for and so few resources, her hands were always full. Later that day, while the children were at their lessons, the janitor, Mr. Turner, went to clean the boys' dormitory. He was an older man with a gruff demeanor, but he had a soft spot for the children, even if he didn't show it often. As he swept the floor, his foot caught on the loose board in the corner. Grumbling under his breath, he bent down to fix it. That's when he noticed the folded piece of paper tucked beneath it. Curious, he pulled it out and unfolded it, his eyes scanning the neat handwriting. By the time he finished reading, his usually stern expression had softened. He stood there for a moment, holding the note as if it were something fragile. Then he folded it again and tucked it into his pocket. That evening, Miss Clara found Mr. Turner in the staff lounge, sipping a cup of tea. She greeted him with a tired smile, sinking into a chair across from him. "Busy day?" he asked, his voice gruff but not unkind. "When isn't it?" she replied with a small laugh. "What about you?" "Found something in the boys' dorm today," he said, pulling the folded note from his pocket and handing it to her. "Thought you might want to see it?" Miss Clara unfolded the note, her brow furrowing as she read. By the time she finished, tears shimmered in her eyes. "This is from Liam," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Figured as much," Mr. Turner said. "Quiet kid. Always writing." Miss Clara sat back in her chair, the note still in her hands. She felt a lump form in her throat as she thought about the boy who had written these words. She had always known Liam was lonely, but seeing it laid bare like this broke her heart. "What are we going to do?" she asked, more to herself than to Mr. Turner. "You're the one with the big heart," he replied, finishing his tea. "You'll figure it out." Miss Clara stayed in the lounge long after Mr. Turner left, the note resting on the table in front of her. She couldn't ignore it, not now, not after seeing the depth of Liam's feelings. She didn't know what she could do, but she knew she had to try. The following morning, Miss Clara's mind was still occupied with Liam's note. She had read it over and over, her heart aching with every word. She wanted to help him, to show him that he was valued and loved, but the challenges of running the orphanage felt overwhelming. Resources were stretched thin, and finding adoptive families for the children had always been a struggle. But Liam's note had struck a chord deep within her. It wasn't just a plea, it was a cry for connection, a reminder of why she had taken this job in the first place. She couldn't let it go unanswered. After breakfast, Miss Clara called Liam into her small office. He walked in hesitantly, his notebook clutched tightly to his chest. "You wanted to see me, Miss Clara?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, Liam. Please, have a seat," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. She smiled gently, trying to put him at ease. "I just wanted to check in with you. How are you doing?" Liam shrugged, staring down at his lap. "I'm okay." Miss Clara leaned forward, her hands folded on the desk. "You know, Liam, I've noticed you spend a lot of time writing. Do you like it?" He nodded slowly. "It helps me think. It's easier than talking." "That's a wonderful gift," Miss Clara said warmly. "Writing can be a powerful way to express yourself." Liam glanced up at her, his expression uncertain. "Why are you asking?" Miss Clara hesitated. She wanted to bring up the note but decided against it. She didn't want to embarrass him or make him feel exposed. Instead, she said, "I just want you to know that I see you, Liam. And if you ever want to talk, or share something you've written, I'm here." Liam nodded again, his grip on his notebook relaxing just a little. "Thanks, Miss Clara." After Liam left, Miss Clara sat back in her chair, her mind racing. She knew she needed to do more than just talk to him. She decided to take action, starting with updating his profile in the adoption registry. She spent the rest of the morning writing a heartfelt description of Liam, not just his basic details, but who he truly was, a thoughtful, creative boy with a love for writing and a deep capacity for kindness. When she finished, she sent the profile to a few adoption agencies she had worked with in the past, hoping someone might take an interest. Meanwhile, Liam returned to his usual routine, unaware of Miss Clara's efforts. The days passed quietly, and he continued to pour his thoughts and dreams into his notebook. But there was a subtle shift in his demeanor, an almost imperceptible flicker of hope that hadn't been there before. Miss Clara's kindness, though small, had planted a seed. One afternoon, while the children were outside playing, Liam sat under the oak tree, his pencil scratching against the paper. He was so absorbed in his writing that he didn't notice Miss Clara approaching until she spoke. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, holding a small blanket and a book. Liam looked up, startled, then shrugged. "Sure." Miss Clara spread the blanket on the grass and sat down beside him. "What are you writing?" "Just a story," Liam said, closing his notebook slightly. "It's not very good." "I'd love to hear it," Miss Clara said sincerely. "If you're comfortable sharing." Liam hesitated, then opened the notebook and began to read. It was a story about a boy who lived in a small village and dreamed of flying. Though he didn't have wings, he built a pair out of sticks and feathers, determined to soar above the clouds. As Liam read, Miss Clara listened intently, her eyes shining with admiration. When he finished, she clapped softly. "That's beautiful, Liam. You have a gift." Liam blushed, a shy smile spreading across his face. "Thanks." A week later, Miss Clara received an email that made her heart skip a beat. It was from a couple, Hannah and Mark, who had seen Liam's updated profile. They were touched by his story and wanted to learn more about him. Miss Clara called them immediately, her excitement barely contained. During their conversation, she learned that Hannah was a teacher and Mark was a journalist. They had always dreamed of adopting a child and felt an immediate connection to Liam after reading his profile. "We'd love to meet him," Hannah said, her voice warm and genuine. Miss Clara arranged for a visit the following weekend. As the day approached, she felt a mix of excitement and nerves. She wanted this to work, but she also knew how fragile Liam's hope could be. The day of the visit, the orphanage was abuzz with activity. The staff cleaned and organized the common areas, and Miss Clara helped Liam pick out his best shirt, a blue one that brought out the color of his eyes. "Are they nice?" Liam asked quietly as Miss Clara combed his hair. "They seem wonderful," she replied, smiling at him in the mirror. "But you don't have to decide anything today, okay? Just be yourself." When Hannah and Mark arrived, Liam watched them from a distance, his heart pounding. They looked kind, Hannah with her warm smile and curly hair, and Mark with his easygoing demeanor and a camera slung over his shoulder. Still, Liam felt a knot of anxiety in his stomach. He had been let down before, and he wasn't sure if he could handle it again. Miss Clara gently nudged him forward. "It's okay, Liam. They just want to get to know you." Liam took a deep breath and walked over to them. Hannah knelt down to his level, her smile genuine. "Hi, Liam. It's so nice to meet you. I'm Hannah, and this is Mark." "Hi," Liam said, his voice barely audible. Mark held up his camera. "I like to take pictures of cool things. Maybe you could show me your favorite spot around here?" Liam hesitated, then nodded. "Okay." He led them to the oak tree, where he spent most of his time writing. As Mark snapped photos of the tree and the surrounding field, Hannah sat beside Liam and asked him about his stories. Slowly but surely, Liam began to open up, sharing bits and pieces of his world. By the end of the visit, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Over the next few weeks, Hannah and Mark visited frequently, spending time with Liam and building a connection. They read his stories, played games with him, and even brought him a journal with his name engraved on the cover. For the first time, Liam began to believe that maybe, just maybe, he had found a place where he belonged. One afternoon, as Liam sat under the oak tree with his new journal, Hannah and Mark approached him with Miss Clara. They sat down beside him, their expressions serious but kind. "Liam," Hannah said gently, "we wanted to talk to you about something important." Liam's heart raced. He clutched the journal tightly, bracing himself for bad news. "We've been spending a lot of time with you," Mark said, his voice steady. "And we've grown to care about you very much. We'd like to adopt you, if that's something you want." Liam stared at them, his mind racing. He had dreamed of this moment for so long, but now that it was here, it felt almost unreal. "Do you really want me?" he whispered. "More than anything," Hannah said, her eyes glistening with tears. Liam looked at Miss Clara, who nodded encouragingly. Then he turned back to Hannah and Mark, a tear slipping down his cheek. "But I want that too." The adoption process took time, but each step brought them closer to becoming a family. As the day of the adoption finalized, Liam felt a mix of excitement and fear. But Hannah and Mark were there every step of the way, reassuring him that he was loved and wanted. On the day he left the orphanage, Liam hugged Miss Clara tightly, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you for everything," he whispered. "Thank you for being you," Miss Clara replied, her voice thick with emotion. "You're going to do amazing things, Liam. Never forget that." As Liam climbed into the car with his new family, he glanced back at the orphanage one last time. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was heading home. The drive to Liam's new home felt like a dream. He stared out the window, watching the countryside blur into towns and neighborhoods, his mind racing with a mix of emotions. The idea of having a real family, still felt surreal. He clutched the leather-bound journal Hannah and Mark had given him, the weight of it grounding him in this strange, new reality. "Are you hungry, buddy?" Mark asked, glancing at Liam through the rearview mirror. Liam shrugged. "A little." Hannah turned to face him from the passenger seat, her smile warm and reassuring. "We can stop and get something to eat if you'd like. What's your favorite food?" "Grilled cheese, I guess," Liam said quietly. Mark chuckled. "Grilled cheese it is. I know a great diner not too far from here." They pulled into a small roadside diner, the kind with checkered floors and red leather booths. As they waited for their food, Liam sat quietly, unsure of what to say. He wasn't used to this, people asking what he liked, what he wanted. It was new, and it made him feel both hopeful and afraid. Hannah noticed his hesitation and gently placed her hand on his. "Liam, I know this is all a lot to take in, and it's okay to feel nervous. But we're here for you, no matter what." Liam nodded, his grip on the journal tightening. "Thanks," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. When they arrived at the house, Liam was struck by how different it was from the orphanage. The house was cozy and inviting, with a front porch that overlooked a small garden. Inside, the walls were lined with bookshelves, and the air smelled faintly of cinnamon and vanilla. "This is your room," Hannah said, opening the door to a small but bright room at the end of the hall. The walls were painted a soft blue, and a wooden desk sat by the window, complete with a lamp and a stack of blank notebooks. Liam stepped inside, his eyes wide. He had never had a room of his own before, not one like this. At the orphanage, he had shared a dormitory with a dozen other boys. But this felt like his. "We thought you might like the desk," Mark said, leaning against the doorframe. "For your writing?" Liam nodded, his throat tight with emotion. He didn't trust himself to speak, so he set his journal on the desk and ran his fingers over the smooth surface. "You don't have to say anything," Hannah said softly. "Take your time. This is your space." Liam turned to them and managed a small smile. "Thank you." The first few weeks in his new home were a mix of adjustment and discovery. Liam was still quiet, but Hannah and Mark were patient, giving him space while gently encouraging him to open up. They asked about his stories, took him on walks in the nearby park, and introduced him to their neighbors, who welcomed him warmly. One day, as they were sitting on the porch after dinner, Mark handed Liam a camera. "I thought you might like this," he said. "It's an old one I used when I first started out. You can take pictures of things that inspire you." Liam turned the camera over in his hands, his eyes lighting up. "Really? I can use it?" "It's yours," Mark said with a grin. "You're a storyteller, Liam. Pictures are just another way to tell stories." Liam spent the next few days experimenting with the camera, snapping photos of the garden, the park, and even the cat that sometimes wandered onto their porch. For the first time in years, he felt a spark of creativity that went beyond his notebook. Hannah and Mark noticed the change in him. He still had moments of doubt, times when he seemed to retreat into himself, but he was beginning to trust them. One evening, as they were sitting in the living room, Hannah brought out a scrapbook. "I thought we could start this together," she said, setting it on the coffee table. "A place to keep your photos and memories." Liam hesitated, then nodded. "Okay." As they worked on the scrapbook, cutting and gluing photos and writing captions, Liam found himself smiling more and more. He showed them one of his favorite photos, a close-up of a flower blooming in the garden, and told them about the story he wanted to write inspired by it. "That's beautiful, Liam," Hannah said. "I can't wait to read it." One day, Liam came home from school with a piece of paper in his hand. He handed it to Hannah, his expression a mix of pride and nervousness. "It's for a writing contest," he said. "My teacher told me about it. The theme is a place to call home." Hannah's eyes lit up. "That sounds perfect for you, Liam. Are you going to enter?" "I want to," he said, shifting his weight. "But what if I'm not good enough?" Hannah knelt down to his level, placing her hands on his shoulders. "Liam, your words are powerful. They come from your heart, and that's what makes them special. You don't have to win to be good enough. Just writing it is enough." Liam nodded, her words sinking in. Over the next few weeks, he poured himself into the story, writing and revising late into the night. He wrote about his journey, from the loneliness of the orphanage to the hope he found in his new home. He wrote about Miss Clara, the oak tree, and the note he had hidden under the floorboard. When he finished, he showed it to Hannah and Mark. They read it together, their eyes glistening with tears by the time they reached the end. "Liam," Mark said, his voice thick with emotion, "this is incredible. I'm so proud of you." A month later, Liam received a letter in the mail. It was from the writing contest. With trembling hands, he opened it, his heart pounding. As he read the first few lines, his eyes widened. "I won," he whispered. "I won." Hannah and Mark hugged him tightly, their pride evident in their smiles. "You deserve this, Liam," Hannah said. "Your words are changing the world, just like they changed ours." The award ceremony was held in a nearby city, and Liam was invited to read his story aloud. Standing on the stage, he felt a mix of nerves and excitement. But as he looked out at the audience, he saw Hannah and Mark smiling at him, their encouragement giving him strength. He took a deep breath and began to read. His voice was steady, his words filled with emotion. By the time he finished, the audience erupted into applause. Liam felt a warmth in his chest, a sense of belonging he had never known before. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Liam continued to thrive, his confidence growing with each new experience. He joined a writing club at school, started a blog to share his stories, and even helped Hannah and Mark organize a fundraiser for the orphanage. One evening, as they were sitting around the dinner table, Liam spoke up. "I've been thinking, I want to go back to St. Mary's. Just to visit." Hannah and Mark exchanged a glance, then nodded. "Of course," Hannah said. "I think that's a wonderful idea." When they arrived at the orphanage, Liam was struck by how small it seemed compared to the way he remembered it. Miss Clara greeted him with open arms, tears streaming down her face as she hugged him tightly. "Look at you," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "You're glowing, Liam." Liam smiled. "I wanted to thank you for everything." They spent the afternoon talking, catching up on everything that had happened since he left. Liam shared his writing contest story with her, and she beamed with pride as she read it. "You've always had a gift, Liam," she said. "I'm so proud of you." Before leaving, Liam slipped a new note under the same loose floorboard where he had hidden his first one. This time, it wasn't a plea, it was a message of hope. "To the next kid who finds this, you are stronger than you think. Don't give up. Your story matters, and one day, someone will see it." As they drove home, Liam felt a sense of peace he had never known before. He was no longer the quiet, invisible boy hiding in the corner. He was Liam, a writer, a storyteller, and someone who had finally found his place in the world. Years passed, and the small boy who once hid notes under floorboards grew into a young man filled with purpose. Liam thrived in his new life with Hannah and Mark, who supported his dreams at every step. His love for storytelling continued to blossom, and by the time he entered high school, he was already earning recognition for his writing. At 17, Liam stood at the edge of the stage in his school's auditorium, clutching a small stack of papers. He was about to give a speech after winning a statewide creative writing contest. The theme of his entry had been home, a topic that remained close to his heart. As he walked onto the stage, the applause was deafening, but Liam wasn't nervous. He had spent years finding his voice, and now, it was stronger than ever. "Thank you," he began, his voice clear and steady. "When I was younger, I didn't think I would ever know what's home really meant. To me, it wasn't just a place, it was a feeling, one I had only dreamed of. I thought I would always be the boy no one noticed, the boy who didn't matter. But someone saw me. Someone believed in me. And that changed everything." He paused, scanning the audience. Hannah and Mark sat in the front row, their faces glowing with pride. Miss Clara was there too, having traveled hours to be part of his big day. Liam continued, his words heartfelt and sincere. "This award isn't just mine. It belongs to everyone who ever believed in me. To the people who reminded me that I had a voice worth sharing. And to the kids who are still waiting to be seen, I see you. Your stories matter." The audience rose to their feet, the applause filling the room. Liam stepped off the stage, his heart full. This wasn't just a victory for him, It was a testament to the power of being seen and loved. As Liam prepared to leave for college, he found himself drawn back to the oak tree in his family's garden, the same place where he had spent countless hours writing as a child. Sitting under its shade, he flipped through his journal, marveling at how much he had grown. Hannah joined him, carrying a tray with 2 mugs of tea. She handed him one and sat beside him, her expression thoughtful. "Big day tomorrow," she said. Liam nodded. "Yeah, it feels surreal." "You've come so far, Liam," she said, her voice warm. "And no matter where you go, we're always here for you." Liam smiled, his gratitude unspoken but deeply felt. "Thank you for everything." The next day, they drove him to his new campus, helping him unpack his things in the small dorm room he would call home. As they said goodbye, Liam hugged them tightly, tears prickling his eyes. "I'll make you proud," he said. "You already have," Mark replied, his voice thick with emotion. College was a whirlwind of new experiences and opportunities. Liam majored in English and creative writing, immersing himself in literature, workshops, and late-night conversations with like-minded peers. He joined the university's literary magazine, where his stories gained attention for their emotional depth and authenticity. But it wasn't just his writing that stood out. Liam had a quiet determination to give back. He volunteered at a local foster care organization, running writing workshops for kids and teens. Sitting with them, listening to their stories, he saw himself in their eyes, the same uncertainty, the same longing to be heard. One afternoon, a 12-year-old boy named Theo approached him after a workshop. Theo had been withdrawn during the session, but now he held a crumpled piece of paper in his hand. "Can I show you something?" Theo asked hesitantly. "Of course," Liam said, smiling. Theo handed him the paper. It was a short poem, raw and unpolished but filled with emotion. As Liam read it, he felt a lump form in his throat. He looked up at Theo, his voice soft. "This is incredible. You're brave for sharing it." Theo shrugged, but Liam could see the glimmer of pride in his eyes. "Do you really think so?" "I know so," Liam said. "You have a gift, Theo. Don't ever stop writing." By the time Liam graduated, he had already started working on his first book, a memoir that combined his own story with the stories of the children he had met through his workshops. The book, titled A Place to Call Home, was published a year later and quickly became a bestseller. It resonated with readers of all ages, shining a light on the resilience of foster children and the importance of human connection. With the success of his book, Liam was invited to speak at conferences, schools, and community events. Each time he stepped onto a stage, he thought of the scared boy he used to be, the one who had hidden his hopes under a floorboard. Now, he was living proof that those hopes could become reality. One day, Liam received an invitation to return to St. Mary's Orphanage for a special event. The orphanage had undergone significant changes in recent years, thanks in part to donations inspired by Liam's story. They were hosting an open house to celebrate their new facilities, and they wanted Liam to be the guest of honor. Walking through the familiar halls, Liam felt a wave of nostalgia. The orphanage looked different, brighter, more welcoming, but the memories lingered. He found himself in the old dormitory, standing by the corner where the loose floorboard had been. "Liam," a voice called from behind him. He turned to see Miss Clara, her face glowing with pride. "Miss Clara," he said, smiling. They hugged tightly, the years melting away. "I can't tell you how proud I am of you," she said, her eyes misty. "You've done so much good." "It's because of you," Liam replied. "You believed in me when no one else did." Miss Clara shook her head. "You had it in you all along. I just gave you a little nudge." As part of the event, Liam spoke to the children currently living at the orphanage. He shared his story, focusing on the moments that had changed his life, the note, the oak tree, and the people who had seen him for who he truly was. "Your story matters," he told them. "Even if it feels like no one is listening right now, someone will. Don't give up." After his speech, a young girl named Emma approached him, clutching a notebook. "I write stories too," she said shyly. Liam knelt down to her level, his smile kind. "Can I read one?" Emma nodded and handed him the notebook. As he read the first few lines, he felt the same spark he had felt with Theo years ago. This was why he had started his journey, to inspire others to find their voices. "You have a gift, Emma," he said, handing the notebook back. "Keep writing. The world needs your stories." In the years that followed, Liam's work continued to expand. He founded an organization called Right to Belong, which provided creative outlets for foster children and orphaned youth. The organization offered workshops, mentorship programs, and publishing opportunities, ensuring that every child had a chance to be heard. Liam's impact rippled far and wide, but he never forgot where he came from. Every so often, he would return to the oak tree in his parents' garden, sitting with his journal and reflecting on the journey that had brought him there. He thought of Hannah and Mark, of Miss Clara, of the note he had written all those years ago. One day, as he sat under the tree, his phone buzzed with a message. It was from Theo, now a college student studying creative writing. "Thank you for believing in me," the message read. "I wouldn't be here without you." Liam smiled, his heart full. He typed a reply, "You're the one who did the hard work, Theo. I'm proud of you." As he set the phone down, Liam opened his journal and began to write. His story wasn't over, not yet. There were still so many voices to amplify, so many lives to touch. And he was ready. Liam's nonprofit organization, Right to Belong, flourished as it expanded its reach. What had started as a small idea, a writing workshop for foster children, had grown into a national movement and now an international initiative. Liam worked tirelessly, traveling to different cities and countries to establish programs, partner with local organizations, and train mentors who could continue the work. The letters and stories that came from the children in these programs became his inspiration. He kept a growing collection in his office, letters scrawled in shaky handwriting, poems written on scraps of paper, and drawings that captured dreams too big to fit in words. Whenever Liam felt overwhelmed, he would sit with those letters and remind himself why he had started this journey. One day, as Liam sorted through a stack of grant proposals at his desk, his assistant, Mia, knocked on the door. "Liam, there's someone here to see you," she said, peeking into the room. "Who is it?" Liam asked, glancing up. "She says her name is Emma. She was part of one of your early workshops." Liam smiled. "Send her in." A young woman stepped into the office, her face lighting up when she saw Liam. "Hi, Mr. Carter," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Emma," Liam said warmly, standing to shake her hand. "It's good to see you. Please call me Liam." Emma sat down, clutching a folder to her chest. "I don't know if you remember me, but I was at St. Mary's Orphanage when you visited a few years ago. You read one of my stories." Liam nodded, the memory coming back to him. "Of course, I remember. You had a talent for storytelling." Emma smiled shyly and opened the folder, pulling out a manuscript. "I wanted to show you this. It's my first novel. I just got a publishing deal." Liam took the manuscript, his heart swelling with pride. He flipped through the pages, skimming the opening paragraphs. Her voice was raw and powerful, her words alive with emotion. "This is incredible, Emma," he said, meeting her gaze. "I'm so proud of you. You're the reason I kept writing," Emma said, her voice cracking. "When you told me my stories mattered, it changed everything." Liam felt a lump rise in his throat. "Your stories mattered long before I said anything, Emma. You're the one who brought them to life." As Emma left, Liam sat back in his chair, holding her manuscript in his hands. Moments like this reminded him that his work wasn't just about giving children a voice. It was about showing them the power they already had. As the years went on, Right to Belong gained global recognition. Liam was invited to speak at conferences, universities, and even the United Nations. He shared the stories of the children he had worked with, amplifying their voices on a global stage. But with success came new challenges. The demands on Liam's time grew, and the pressure to secure funding and manage the organization often felt overwhelming. He found himself working late nights, his schedule packed with meetings, interviews, and travel. One evening, as Liam sat in his office reviewing plans for a new mentorship program, Mark called. "Hey, son," Mark said, his voice warm. "Just checking in. How are you holding up?" Liam leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. "I'm okay. Just busy." "Too busy?" Mark asked gently. Liam hesitated. Maybe a little. Don't forget to take care of yourself, Mark said. The work you're doing is incredible, but you can't pour from an empty cup. Liam smiled faintly. Thanks, Dad. I'll try to remember that. After the call, Liam closed his laptop and stepped outside. The night was quiet, the air cool against his skin. He looked up at the stars, thinking about the journey that had brought him here. A few weeks later, Liam received an invitation to return to St. Mary's Orphanage for a special reunion event. The orphanage, now a vibrant and thriving home for children, wanted to honor Liam for his contributions. As Liam walked through the familiar halls, he was greeted by laughter and warmth. The rooms were brighter, filled with books, art supplies, and photos of smiling children. Miss Clara, now retired but still deeply involved with the orphanage, greeted him with a hug. "Liam," she said, her eyes shining with pride. "It's so good to see you." "It's good to be back," Liam replied, taking in the changes. "You've done amazing work here." "It's not just me," Miss Clara said. "Your story inspired so much of this. The children see what you've done, and it gives them hope." During the event, Liam spoke to the children, sharing his journey and encouraging them to dream big. He told them about the note he had written and how it had changed his life in ways he could never have imagined. "Never underestimate the power of your words," he said. "What you write, what you create, it matters. It can change lives, starting with your own." After the reunion, Liam sat under the oak tree in the orphanage's yard, the same tree where he had spent countless hours writing as a child. He pulled out a notebook and began to write, the words flowing easily. "To the next child who sits under this tree, I was once where you are now, feeling small and unseen. But you are not small, and you are not unseen. Your voice matters. Your story matters. Keep writing. Keep dreaming. The world is waiting to hear from you." Liam tore the page from his notebook and tucked it into a small box he had brought with him. Inside the box were dozens of letters, each one written by children who had been part of Right to Belong. He buried the box at the base of the tree, a time capsule of hope for the next generation. Years later, Liam's work continued to thrive. He had published several more books, each one amplifying the voices of children from foster care and orphanages around the world. Right to Belong had grown into a global movement, with programs in over 50 countries and millions of lives touched. But despite the accolades and recognition, Liam remained humble. He often returned to the places where his journey had begun: St. Mary's, his childhood home with Hannah and Mark, the oak tree in their garden. These places reminded him of who he was and why he had started. One day, as Liam prepared for another speaking engagement, he received an email from a young woman named Sophie. She had found one of his books in a library and wanted to thank him for inspiring her. "I'm studying to become a teacher," the email read. "I want to help kids like me find their voices. Thank you for showing me it's possible." Liam smiled, his heart full. He replied, "You're going to change lives, Sophie. Keep going. The world needs your story." As he sent the email, Liam thought about the ripple effect of kindness and belief. His journey had started with a single note, written by a scared boy who dared to dream of something better. Now, that dream had grown into a legacy, one that would continue long after him. Sitting under the oak tree in his garden, Liam picked up his pen and began to write again. His story wasn't over, not yet. Liam sat in his office at the Right to Belong headquarters, a bustling space filled with books, art supplies, and photographs from programs around the world. On the wall behind him was a mural painted by children in the program, depicting a tree with roots spreading across the globe. Each branch bore the name of a city or village where the organization had made an impact. As Liam reviewed applications for the next round of writing workshops, his assistant, Mia, knocked on the door. "Liam, there's someone here to see you. It's one of the kids from our New York program, Jordan." "Send him in," Liam said, setting aside the papers. He remembered Jordan well, a bright but guarded 13-year-old who had joined a workshop the previous year. Jordan's poems had been raw and powerful, hinting at a depth of emotion that Liam recognized immediately. Jordan stepped into the office, his sneakers scuffing the floor. He carried a small, tattered notebook, holding it tightly against his chest. "Hey, Jordan," Liam said, smiling warmly. "What brings you here?" Jordan hesitated, glancing around the room before sitting down. I wanted to show you something, he said, opening the notebook. He flipped to a page near the middle and handed it to Liam. It's a new poem. I wrote it after the last workshop. Liam read the poem carefully, his expression softening with every line. It was about a boy who felt invisible, like a shadow in a room full of light, until someone noticed him. The imagery was vivid, the emotions raw and unfiltered. This is incredible, Jordan, Liam said, handing the notebook back. You have a gift. Jordan shrugged, his eyes downcast. I don't know. Just words? No, Liam said firmly. It's more than words. You're sharing a part of yourself, and that takes courage. Don't ever doubt how powerful that is. Jordan's lips twitched into a small smile, but he quickly masked it. Thanks, he muttered. Over the next few months, Liam kept in touch with Jordan, encouraging him to keep writing and inviting him to attend more workshops. Slowly, Jordan began to open up, his confidence growing with every poem he shared. But Liam could tell there was still something holding him back. One afternoon, as they sat together after a workshop, Liam decided to ask, Jordan, can I ask you something? Yeah, Jordan said, his voice cautious. Why do you write? Liam asked. What does it mean to you? Jordan was quiet for a long moment, staring at the notebook in his lap. Finally, he said, it's the only way I know how to say what I'm feeling. Sometimes, it's like the words are stuck inside me, and if I don't get them out, I'll explode. Liam nodded, understanding all too well. I felt the same way when I was your age. Writing saved me. It helped me find my voice when I thought no one wanted to hear it. Jordan looked up at him, his expression unreadable. Do you ever feel like it's not enough? Like no matter how much you write, it doesn't change anything? Liam leaned forward, his gaze steady. All the time. But then I think about the people who've read my words and told me they mattered. It doesn't have to change the whole world, Jordan. Sometimes, it just has to change one person's world. Jordan considered this, his brow furrowing. I don't think I've changed anyone's world. You changed mine, Liam said softly. Your poems remind me why I do this. And I guarantee you've touched more people than you realize. Inspired by Liam's words, Jordan began to share his poems more openly. He submitted one to a school competition and won first place, an achievement that surprised even him. His teachers began to take notice, encouraging him to join the school's creative writing club. For the first time, Jordan felt like he belonged somewhere. One day, during a workshop, Liam gave the group an assignment: write a letter to your future self. As the kids scribbled in their notebooks, Liam walked around the room, offering encouragement and feedback. When he reached Jordan's desk, he noticed the boy staring at a blank page, his pencil tapping nervously against the edge. Having trouble? Liam asked. Jordan nodded. I don't know what to say. I don't even know who I'll be in the future. That's okay, Liam said. Think about what you'd want your future self to know. What advice would you give him? Jordan hesitated, then began to write. Liam moved on, giving him space, but he couldn't help glancing back at the boy who had come so far in such a short time. Months later, Liam received an invitation to Jordan's school. The Creative Writing Club was hosting a showcase, and Jordan had asked Liam to attend. When the day arrived, Liam sat in the front row, his heart swelling with pride as Jordan took the stage. The boy's hands shook slightly as he adjusted the microphone, but his voice was steady as he began to read. To the boy I used to be, the one who thought he'd never be seen, this is for you. You're stronger than you think, braver than you know, and your words are worth sharing. Don't give up. The world is waiting for you. By the time Jordan finished, the audience was on their feet, applauding. Liam stood among them, his eyes glistening with tears. He knew this was just the beginning for Jordan, a boy who had found his voice and was ready to share it with the world. As Right to Belong continued to grow, Liam found himself mentoring more and more young people like Jordan, kids who had felt invisible, unheard, and unsure of their place in the world. Each one brought their own unique perspective, their own stories that deserved to be told. One of those kids was Mia, a 15-year-old girl from a foster home in Chicago. Mia's stories were sharp and witty, filled with humor that masked a deeper pain. She reminded Liam of himself in some ways, guarded, but with a fire inside her that refused to be extinguished. During one workshop, Mia shared a short story about a girl who built a boat out of scraps and set sail on a stormy sea, determined to find a place where she belonged. The story was raw and gripping, and Liam knew immediately that Mia had something special. "This is amazing," Liam told her. "You should think about submitting this to a contest." Mia snorted. "Yeah, right. Like anyone's gonna care about what I write?" "I care," Liam said firmly. "And I think a lot of other people will too." With Liam's encouragement, Mia submitted the story and won. The recognition gave her the confidence to keep writing, and soon, she was dreaming of becoming an author. Years later, as Liam looked out at a conference room filled with children, mentors, and educators, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. The ripple effect of his work had grown beyond anything he could have imagined. Kids like Jordan and Mia weren't just finding their voices, they were inspiring others to do the same. At the end of the conference, a young boy approached Liam, clutching a notebook. "Mr. Carter," he said shyly, "can I show you something?" Liam knelt down, his smile kind. "Of course." The boy opened the notebook to a story about a boy who built a bridge to connect two islands, bringing people together. As Liam read, he felt the familiar swell of pride and hope. "This is wonderful," he said. "Keep writing. The world needs stories like this." The boy beamed, his confidence growing in the light of Liam's encouragement. And as Liam watched him walk away, he knew that the next generation was ready to carry the torch forward.